Hey, what's up, K-pop fam? Theo and our head of content and marketing, Rachel, here today. Bear with us. This is our first time ever doing sort of a interview blog style video post. But I think you guys will really enjoy this. The idea actually came up for this, and you guys will hear all about it, when Rachel and I were actually driving to Koreatown. Rachel has a very interesting background and story that I got to learn about, and given the promotion of the K-Town set, I thought it was really a great opportunity for us to talk about it. I think K-Town has gone through their own story, and I think yours can kind of actually parallel with it. But to start, I think, why don't you give them, a quick little background about you, what you do at K-Pop Foods, and let's start there.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm head of content here at K-Pop Foods, and basically everything that you see on our Instagram and our Facebook is what I usually do. So I edit all of those. So if you don't like them, don't tell me. If you do like them, let me know. I grew up in Orange County. I just graduated from college last year, and I've been working here for about 6 months.
Okay, so I guess, we'll jump right into it. I think you have a really interesting story. Your name, Rachel Thompson. I'll admit, when I first saw your resume, the first thing that popped off was that you were the captain of your swim team for 2 years. I feel like most people are just captain 1 year, so that definitely popped off. But the second thing was when you told me that you were Korean and I see Rachel Thompson, I'm like, interesting. I'll admit, I was thrown off by it. But why don't you talk a little bit about your family background, family history, and sort of that, and then we can dive into, I'm sure you've got other stories other than just me. So.
Yeah, okay. So my last name is Thompson, obviously, so I get a lot of questions of where did that come from? Are you adopted? Stuff like that. But no, both my parents were born in Korea, and I'm Korean and Mexican. So that always throws people off because they're like, oh, Thompson, where is that coming from? And then they're like, oh, so who's Mexican? And my dad his biological dad was Mexican, and he was there for the army, so that's how we met my grandma. And then my mom and my dad moved out here, my mom when she was about 16, and my dad moved to Guam when he was 9, and then moved out here when he was in college. So, they're both Korean and stuff like that, so people always ask me questions, and they're like, oh, are you adopted? What's up? So, I know. They're like, are you adopted? Is that it? And I'm like, no. My parents are both Asian, and that always throws people off because of the last name. And then I go into this whole spiel. My grandma got remarried, stuff like that. That's where it comes from. Because you don't really see, ethnic people with, a white last name, So, gotcha. But I hated explaining it. Absolutely hated explaining it when I was growing up. Because, it gets annoying after a while. It gets tedious saying it over and over again so many times. So after a while, when people were like, oh, what Asian are you? I'm like, I'm Mexican. And then it, throws people off. And I'm like, because it's cool because my background is so different. And, it's so, there's, a story behind it. Absolutely. So now I'm, okay with telling people. But when I was younger, I hated it. Absolutely hated it.
Yeah, I mean, growing up with that, I'm sure it was really difficult, and just for everyone to sort of know, I guess you grew up in Orange County, but back then it definitely wasn't as Asian, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that correct? And so, I mean, what was it like growing up with that name? I'm sure people drew ideas.
So, obviously, if you see it on paper, you don't really expect to see, an Asian kid, Yeah. So, I've gotten a lot of teachers and, substitute teachers who are you're not in the right spot, you don't belong, at that seat, whatever, stop, messing around or whatever. And that was super frustrating for me because I'm well, then, you're literally telling me I'm not who I am, So that's frustrating, one. And then two, where I grew up, I didn't grow up near Irvine.
Yeah.
So, I grew up with primarily, white kids and, Hispanics and all of that. So, our Asian community was really small. And so I kind of, tried going towards the Asians groups of kids when I was growing up, but because they knew I wasn't full, or they knew that I wasn't, they're not full Asian, they were really weird about it. I got weird vibes.
Gotcha.
And it was a weird limbo. I didn't really have anywhere I belonged, so I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. But I met all of my friends through swimming.
Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
So all of my really close friends are from swimming and not from school or anything like that.
So swimming was something very dear.
Yeah.
Brought
you bond through pain.
A self-sense.
Yeah, you bond through pain.
No, I mean that's crazy, and I mean just growing up and being such a young kid, you know, having to deal with that sort of identity crisis. I'm sure it was tough, and you know, I'd love for people to hear about the ESL story that you told.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rough.
Yeah.
It's crazy that happened.
Yeah.
Your mom raised a really good point.
Yeah. So, because I was so quiet, I didn't really speak a lot because I was naturally shy anyway. But I learned English before I entered kindergarten, so I was fluent. But because I didn't talk, and like they were like, oh, she probably doesn't speak English, so they just assumed. So they put me in English learning all the way through like middle school, like 6th or 7th grade, and I passed it the first time in kindergarten, and they're like, oh, there's something wrong every single year. And at that time I was just like, oh, okay, cool, like whatever, like I get to skip class for like an hour and a half or whatever. But my mom would just get like super annoyed and like frustrated because she's like, she passed it the first time, why is she still continuing to do this? And they were just like, oh, there's something wrong, like she didn't pass this and this. And my mom's like, what do you mean, like she speaks English, she passed it, like I don't understand. So like looking back, I'm like, I would get actually annoyed because like everyone there like literally didn't know how to speak English, but I was just like there, and I was just like, yeah, I'm speaking to you, like I don't get it. So
it's hard.
Yeah,
and then, you know, obviously along with that, sort of all the identity things, what do you think that, you know, obviously I think a lot of people have gone through that same identity crisis, and you kind of get to a point where you're kind of like, you know, I don't really want to embrace being Korean. Did you ever go through that when you were growing up?
Yeah, because I grew up in a primarily like not like Asian kind of like area, I like assimilated into the, you know, like I just wanted to fit in. And of course. Especially like growing up a lot, like I remember bringing like panchan to school. Like the side Korean dishes. Food. Yeah, the side dishes. I remember like bringing like kimchi and all of that, and like the kids at that time were super blunt, like kind of mean at that age. So
some rough 5-year-olds.
Yeah, they're rough 7-year-olds, man. But they were like, "Oh, that smells weird," and I was like, "What?" Like I was like, "What do you mean?" Like I grew up with it, so I was like, "No, like it's fine." And they're like, "Well, like you smell weird now because you're eating it. Like why are you doing that?" And then like all the other kids jump in, you know. I remember being so humiliated and like embarrassed. I went home and I was like, Mom, we're not doing this anymore. Like I'm just gonna buy lunch from now on. And don't like bring me any Asian food or Korean food outside of the home. Like we only did it at the home. And like I think it was more prevalent like when Psy came out, and like all of that craziness and stuff like that. Like Big Bang like came out with like Fantastic Baby or whatever, and that music video was just like so out there and weird, and Gangnam Style was so out there and weird that like I remember like my family and I were super excited because we're like, this is really big, you know, like this is huge, it's on the radio. And then I remember coming home like to school after that weekend, and people just like literally trashed me for it, like just made fun of me, and they were just like, everything's like that, everyone's like that. Or they would be like, do you know how to Gangnam Style and stuff like that? Dance and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, no, not everyone is like that. And it was just like so annoying because they would be like try to sing it and like make fun of the language almost, you know. So I was just like annoyed by it. And so
it gained so much popularity that it was hard, right?
And it was to run away from everywhere. So like
Did your parents get that sort of sense? Did they pick up on like that sense that you were kind of like, I don't want to be this close to the Korean culture, and how to make them feel, I guess? Yeah, I
mean, I think since it was so weird and I was just trying to like fit in and not like be different, that like my dad would always show us like Korean like dramas and like music videos and stuff like that, and like try to like assimilate us into the culture, and I would always say like, no. Like, I would literally tell him, no, I don't want to listen to it. I don't want to hear it. Like, you know? And, like, I think it did hurt them a little bit just because it's, like, our culture. It's who we are. And I was just like, no, I don't want to do any of that. Because, like, we were, before, like, I started pushing things away, I literally remember watching, like, Korean cartoons in the, like, on Saturday mornings. And, like, and it just started dwindling out as I was, like, me and my sisters were like, no. Like, we don't want it. So, I think it did hurt them because, like, they literally moved from their country here. And, like, it's a comfort thing. Like, if I moved to a different country, I'd be like, American food just to feel at home, you know? So I feel like that hurt them.
I remember you telling me that you used to speak to your parents in Korean.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just like...
Yeah, I
more,
think
right?
after I was like not trying, like after I was just like, I don't really want to do this anymore, I stopped speaking Korean. But my parents would speak to me, so at least I like understood that, and like I understand a lot now, but I just would speak back to them in English. So I lost that,
Yeah.
which is probably one of like the biggest regrets that I have now. But yeah, I felt like now I'm like, I should have kept it, because at least like I wish I would have segmented my life differently. Like I'd be Korean at home, but like Korean American outside. you
Gotcha.
know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, you know, when you're going through
Yeah.
all that stuff as a little
Yeah.
kid, you kind of I just want to be a normal kid and get along.
Yeah,
with everyone.
yeah.
So-
Especially in like middle school,
Yeah.
like elementary school, you're trying to like shape yourself.
trying to find your identity, your group,
Yeah,
and things
yeah.
like that. So, no, that's super interesting. I think a lot of people, can probably resonate with that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, the next piece, I guess, would be the turning point.
Yeah.
It's like a game, right?
Yeah.
Right? It's like a basketball game, up, down, up,
Yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah.
But what was, I'm interested, you mentioned a little bit about it, but what was the big turning point for you where you started to get back into the Korean culture, Korean food? And
Yeah.
things like that?
So it was probably like senior year high school into my college.
Yep.
Most distinctly was like my little sister started getting into K-pop.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hence K-pop foods.
No, but there's a Netflix series by GOT7, a K-pop group, and it's like a mini docu-series, like mini vlogs.
What's GOT7? I'm sorry.
I just said they were a K-pop group.
Okay.
Anyway, so GOT7 is a K-pop group, and they have like a mini docu-series, like mini vlogs on Netflix.
Yeah, very
And
cool.
my dad showed it to my little sister, and she got really into it, and it kind of like took off from there, and she found BTS.
Yeah.
So at first, she was like, listen to this group, like, they're so good, like, I love them. And I was like, no. Like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not doing that. And then after I, like, saw her getting, like, really into it, I was like, okay, I'm going to support her in this because she supported me through my One Direction phase. I need to support her through this. I thought it was going to last 3 years, and
Yeah.
here we are 7 years later. It's fine. But after that, I was like, oh, they're actually pretty good. And I, like, got into it. And I was like, this is a perfect opportunity for me to, like, kind of learn Korean again
Yeah.
through something that I like, and it's not like forced. It's something that I wanted to do because I want to understand and like listen to the music or whatever more. So it was a little bit easier that way. And then I taught myself how to read and write a few summers ago, and then I've taken like a few classes like in college. So
Nice. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, thinking about that, so it sounds like your younger sister was actually the big influence that got you
Yeah.
sort of, you when you were younger, you sort of said, I don't want to be like the Korean culture and everything, I don't want to be too close to it. Then your little sister was kind of like pushed you into it even more.
Yeah.
What do
Yeah.
you think was the motivation? Do you think it was just the music, or do you think there's other things going on that got your sister really into it?
I'm not sure what her motivation was. I think our dad has always been like kind of pushing us to like go back to it.
Yeah.
But I think my little sister just like really pulled interest in it because I think she was the first one to just be like, no, like I want to be proud of like this culture because we
Yeah.
are different and like we have such a background
Yeah.
that like she just wanted to go back to it because like by the time like she was like old enough, we had pushed ourselves away from it so that she was like, no, I want to learn more about it. I want
Yeah.
to like go back. And I think like that push was like, okay, like I should probably do that as well. So that really pushed it. Yeah.
And then I guess, what sort of, obviously like making that sort of big of a change when you're growing up and you're kind of like rejecting it, okay, I'll get back into it, but was there anything else that sort of pushed that thing forward for you? To really like, because I mean, you went
Yeah.
pretty hardcore, like you went from saying no to like getting into the K-pop
Yeah.
music, but what else sort of drove that forward? Because
Yeah.
knowing you now, you know a lot about K-pop, yes, and we'll talk about that later, but like into the Korean food and that knowledge and that interest, what sort of pushed that? What do you think from like a higher level?
One time where I think this was actually the turning point where I was just like, no, like this is who I am.
Yeah.
Was that like I think I was in like high school or college, freshman year, senior year, somewhere around there. And I remember talking to my friend and I was like, oh, I'm Korean. And I'm like, and she was like, no, you're not. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm Korean.
I know what I am.
Yeah, I'm like, my parents are Korean. And she's like, no, you're not Korean because you're not from Korea. Like, your parents are Korean because they're from Korea.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
she's like, no, you're like, I'm like, then what am I, just Asian? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, you can't do that. Like, Asian is so many different cultures and like ethnicities. And she's like, no, you're like Korean American. I'm like, but that's still Korean. Like, I'm still Korean. Like, you can't tell me who I am and who I'm not if I identify with that, you know? So I think after that, I was like, no, I'm Korean. I'm going to be Korean. And like, there's definitely a distinct difference between being Korean, like from Korea, and being Korean American.
Yeah.
But I'm still associating, like, I still think and identify as myself as Korean.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that also really contributed to me, like, really going all out into it. But also with like the rise of like Korean beauty, like skincare, and like all of like the food and stuff like that.
Like all the bigger macro trends that sort of came through that gateway.
It made it a lot easier to like transition into it because it was getting so like popularized that I was like, oh, it's easy for me to like move towards it.
Yeah.
And be like, yeah, like I know what that is. So.
Yeah, and then, you know, obviously as you start to become more Korean and we start to see all these things sort of pop up.
Yeah.
Especially like, thank you to like Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah.
You know, because he was probably the first person to really shed light on at least Korean food, but also like more of a lifestyle guy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, and then, you know, obviously Roy Choi with Kogi, you know, David Chang, and obviously, you know, Chris O. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you. The Food Network champion. You know, at least, you know, obviously at K-Pop Foods we talk about food all the time, so that's how I always associate things. But you know, I felt like with that rise in Korean, at least a lot of my friends here in LA were always like, dude, take me to K-Town, Korean barbecue. And so I ended up becoming like a Korean like ambassador. And at that point I was barely really into it. You know, this is like back in 2011. But like, what about you? Like, I know you had some interesting stories coming from Washington State.
Yeah. So I went to school in Washington State. So in Pullman, there's like no Asian food. Yeah, it's like wheat field outside of the campus.
Yeah.
So my mom would actually send me like a box like subscription of like panchan. So it would have like kimchi and like all these side dishes, and I would like almost cry. Like the first time I got it, I like cried. I was so excited.
You're not ashamed anymore.
Yeah, I was like,
oh, you stink right now.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm crying. And because it's like cold over there, I like invited a few of my friends over one day, like my teammates, and I was like, oh, I made kimchi jjigae. And they're like, what is this? I'm like, it's Korean food. And they were like so confused because they always associate it with like barbecue.
Yeah.
So like me making like all these different dishes, it kind of expanded their knowledge on like what Korean food is, and it's just so many different things, and it's not just like meat and barbecue.
And then, you know, I think Korean barbecue, like a lot of people associate it, but I do think it was like the easiest way for people that were new to Korean food to get in, because everyone knows meat. But what was great is that most Korean barbecue places have all the banchan, so people try the kimchi. They learn about that, and you know, with the rise of social media and content, like, people taking photos of everything.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
you know, it looks really good, and so, you know, I think it's good. But you know, I think this is like the perfect tie in, because, you know, at least for me, when I think of Koreatown, you know, when we're driving out to Koreatown and you were telling me this, I was in my mind, I'm just like trying to play like that rise of everything in Koreatown, which today was totally different than it was back in 2010.
Oh yeah.
Right?
100%.
And I think it kind of follows your path of like when you really started to embrace it, and then Koreatown really started to
take
explode.
off. Yeah,
right?
For sure.
Well, I mean, what is your take on that whole thing?
I think it became more accepting and easier for people to like get into it, because like Psy really opened the door.
Yeah,
and, like,
it's funny. We hated Psy.
We hated him, but like he was a really big like influence in like probably one of the founders of like the growth of Korean culture in the like U.S.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, it's weird. And then like I think from that, like Korean beauty started getting really big, and like their skincare and stuff like that. And then I think the rise of food got really big at that time. And then I think because of BTS and the whole K-pop thing like exploding, it really opened the door for like Korean culture. Like there's so many K-pop groups like touring the US now, and like you're playing it on the radio, you know? Like BTS is on like Kiss FM now. Like that's I would have never even thought of that like a few years ago. And they're like at award shows, and there's like they went to the Grammys. Like that's amazing. And it's not even like that. It's like just so much more Asian cultures everywhere.
Yeah.
Like Crazy Rich Asians and all of that. Just like Asian visibility is just getting so big now. And like I think like because of that, it's easier for people to like move to like Koreatown and like
Yeah.
J-Town and stuff like that. It's
Mhm.
like way easier.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's always good, right? I think
Mhm.
you know, without these sort of trends, I don't know if K-pop foods would be where it is today.
Yeah.
I never would have met you. You know, I really liked your story because, you know, just going through, you went through, I think, a lot of the things that a lot of
Mhm.
people growing up had to go through.
Mhm.
And I just think it parallels so closely with like a lot of what other people went through, Koreatown, and sort of how it took off, and things like that. And yeah, you know, I'm really glad we got your story in there. Is there anything else you want to add?
No.
Oh, come on, you got so many good stories. Don't worry. She's also like a K-pop music like expert, which she touched on a little bit, but
I'm
we'll
like-
dig a little bit deeper into that a little later.
I know embarrassingly too much about K-pop. Like,
I mean, having two younger sisters probably.
no, I'm the middle one.
Oh yeah, you're the
Yeah,
middle
I'm the
one.
middle one. Yeah. I just researched a lot so I could high level talk to my little sister.
It's good. See,
I'm
I
trying
got
to
it.
bond.
But yeah, you know, I hope, you know, everyone that tuned in, you know, I hope you really enjoyed it. You know, obviously, as you follow us on social media or anything or any content partnerships, Rachel's been a big driver of it with her and her team. Rebecca over here, you can't see her on camera. And so, you know, we got some really big things coming out soon. So stay tuned. But I hope you enjoyed this piece. Again, this is our first time doing it, so hopefully you guys don't trash us for it. But
Please be nice. Please be nice.
yeah, but you know, a lot of this was, you know, in collaboration with, you know, our Cape Town set. Shameless product plug, but I got to do it. We really want that to take off, and so thus far it's been doing really well. But yeah, with that, you know, I thank everyone for tuning in, and you know, we'll catch you guys soon. Later.